Some people enter your life quietly, no announcement, no fanfare, and rearrange everything without you ever seeing their hands move. Janet Santos was that kind of woman. Henry Anderson had spent 15 years building walls. She brought no hammer. She brought only herself. Henry Anderson was not the kind of man who forgot things. Not a face, not a number, not a betrayal. Especially not a betrayal. He had built his empire on memory, on the cold, precise understanding that people, when given the chance, will always choose themselves. He had tested this theory in the most calculated way a powerful man could. He left money out, he watched, he waited, and without exception, they took it. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe, share, and give a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Now, back to the story. $12,000 on the dresser. Every bill deliberate, every note placed like a question he already knew the answer to. He stood behind the door, still as winter, watching through the gap, because Henry Anderson did not trust hope. He autopsied it instead. Then Janet walked in. She was not what he expected. She never was. She moved through the room the way honest people move, without performance, without hesitation, without anything to prove. She saw the money. She stopped. And in that single suspended moment, something shifted in the air. The way a room changes right before a storm decides whether to break. She did not reach for it. She counted it. Every single bill. Stacked it carefully. Wrote the total on a slip of paper. Pressed her signature beneath it like a seal. Set it beside the money. And went back to work. Henry did not move for a long time. Because in 15 years, through every test, every trap, every careful arrangement of trust disguised as carelessness, nobody had ever done that. Nobody. Nobody prepares you for the person who walks into your carefully constructed world and simply refuses to be impressed by it. Janet Santos arrived at 7:43 on a Tuesday morning. Henry knew because he checked. He always checked. Old habit. The kind of habit that keeps billionaires alive and everyone else slightly uncomfortable. She moved through the East Wing the way people move when they have real work to do. No lingering, no wandering eyes, no slow, appreciative glances at the art on the walls. She did not care about the art. That alone unsettled him. Then she found the money. He watched from the shadow of the corridor, arms folded, jaw set, waiting for the moment he knew was coming. The pause, the calculation, the hand reaching forward. Instead, she tilted her head, clicked her tongue softly, and under her breath, quiet as a private thought, she muttered, "Rich people leave money around like bookmarks." Something happened in Henry Anderson's chest that he refused to name. He did not laugh. He came close, dangerously close. She counted every bill with the focused patience of a woman who understood exactly what money was worth, because she had never had enough of it to be careless with it. She stacked it, neat, precise, unhurried. Wrote the total on paper she pulled from her own pocket. Signed her name in full. Set it down beside the stack like a receipt. And then she went back to work. Henry stood in the dark of that corridor long after she moved on. Something about it disturbed him in a way he could not immediately locate. She had touched his money without a single trace of greed, and somehow he felt that more than he should have. When a man who trusts no one finds someone he cannot catch lying, he does not relax. He tests harder. Henry told himself it was methodology. Science, even. He left $2,000 next. Then 8. Then a Patek Philippe watch on the kitchen counter. $60,000 on a man's wrist. Placed as casually as a forgotten coffee cup. Then a sealed envelope on his office desk, with her name written on nothing, because nothing was written on it, and the money inside was real. Every morning, Janet found it. Every morning, Janet documented it. Every morning, Henry stood somewhere in the architecture of that house and watched and waited and felt something he would not yet call disappointment at being proven wrong. He told himself he was being thorough. He was lying to himself. Because somewhere between the third test and the seventh, Henry Anderson stopped checking his watch when Janet arrived. He started arranging his mornings around her schedule instead. Not consciously, not deliberately. The way water finds a slope, without deciding to. He noticed things he had no business noticing. The way she talked quietly to herself when she thought no one could hear. The small, precise focus she brought to every corner of every room, and her hands, reddened, dry, cracked at the knuckles from the chemicals she used without complaint. He ordered the best protective gloves available, had them delivered anonymously to the supply room with no note. Janet found them, held them up in front of two colleagues, set them down. "If everyone doesn't get gloves," she said, "neither do I." Henry, 3 rooms away, heard every word. He upgraded supplies for the entire staff the following morning. He told his assistant it was a policy review. It was not a policy review. That same afternoon, a man from the grounds crew said something that made Janet laugh. Full and unguarded and completely unaware of the man standing at the window above. Henry watched and felt something cold and sharp move through him that had absolutely nothing to do with the weather. It bothered him more than it should have, hearing another man earn what he had been waiting all week to hear. He did not examine that thought carefully. He was afraid of what he would find. There are conversations that change nothing on the surface. No confession, no declaration, no dramatic moment anyone could point to afterward. And yet something fundamental shifts underneath, quiet as a fault line, and neither person walks away quite the same. This was one of those conversations. It was late. The kind of late where a house this size stops pretending and settles into its own silence. Janet believed she was alone. She moved through the study the way she always did when the building emptied. Unhurried, humming something soft and private under her breath. Completely and dangerously herself. She did not hear him. Henry had told himself he was working late. He was not working. He was standing in the doorway of his own study, watching a woman dust the spines of books she would never be paid to read, and finding it, against every instinct he possessed, difficult to leave. She turned, saw him. She did not startle the way most people startled around him. She simply paused, tilted her head slightly, and said, "You walk very quietly for a man who owns half the building?" Something moved at the corner of his mouth. "And you count very quietly," he said, "for someone who knows exactly where every dollar is." The air between them did something neither of them acknowledged. She held his gaze 1 beat longer than was necessary. Then she reached past him, close, not touching, but close enough that he caught the faint warmth of her, and lifted a cloth from the shelf behind his arm. His breath did not behave itself. "Do billionaires usually inspect dust personally?" she asked, already moving back to work, unbothered. Only," he said quietly, "when the dust becomes interesting." Janet Santos did not smile at that, but she wanted to, and somehow, he knew it. The most dangerous thing a closed man can do is start caring about someone's whereabouts, because the moment you notice someone is gone, you have already admitted they matter. Henry noticed on a Tuesday. Janet left 40 minutes early. No explanation given to anyone, No request filed, no pattern he could dismiss as coincidence, because it happened again the following Tuesday. And the one after that, always Tuesday. Always the same quiet disappearance. Coat folded over her arm, head down, moving through the side exit like a woman who had somewhere urgent to be and absolutely no intention of explaining it to anyone. Henry Anderson told himself he was protecting his household. He followed her. There is a particular kind of man who cannot say what he feels, so he builds it instead. Quietly, carefully. In ways the other person was never supposed to trace back to him. Henry Anderson was that kind of man. Within 48 hours of sitting in that hospital car park, Gabriel Santos had a private room. The billing department received an anonymous transfer that cleared every outstanding amount and extended a line of credit for treatment costs going forward. No name attached. No note. Nothing that could be returned, because nothing could be traced. Henry also revised Janet's schedule. Tuesdays and Thursdays freed without explanation, filed under an administrative restructuring no one questioned, because no one questioned him. Then he established a medical assistance fund for all household staff, announced through HR as a long overdue policy review. He told himself it was the right thing to do. He told himself that a lot those days. He was in the hospital corridor on a Thursday. He would not examine why he was there when he heard it. An administrator, clipped and dismissive, speaking to Janet about paperwork in the particular tone people reserve for those they believe cannot push back. Janet's spine was straight. Her voice was even. But her hands... Henry saw her hands tighten around the folder she was holding. He crossed the corridor before he made the decision to move. "You'll speak to her again," he said quietly, "when you've remembered how respect sounds." The administrator left. Henry turned. Janet was watching him with an expression that was not gratitude. "I don't need rescue," she said. "Just fairness." She said it without anger, without performance, simply and directly, the way she did everything. And Henry Anderson, a man who had spent 15 years believing strength was the only language worth speaking, felt something in that quiet correction land deeper than any gratitude ever had. She didn't want to be saved. She wanted to be seen. And somehow, that undid him completely. He hated himself for it the entire drive. She took 2 buses. He followed in a car he never used because it wouldn't be recognized. He watched her walk quickly, shoulders forward, not the loose, easy pace of a woman running a personal errand. This was someone carrying weight. This was someone holding themselves together with sheer will and forward momentum. She stopped outside City General Hospital. He sat in the parked car, engine off, something in his chest going very, very still. He watched her stand outside the entrance for 40 seconds, just standing, eyes closed, one hand pressed flat against her sternum like she was physically pushing something back down inside herself. Then she straightened, wiped her face once, and walked through those doors with a smile already forming, warm and steady and real, as if the 40 seconds outside had never happened. Henry did not follow her in. He did not need to, because he understood it then. All of it. The early departures, the exhaustion she never complained about, the careful way she handled money that was never hers to take. Somewhere inside that building was the reason Janet Santos had never once reached for what would have made her life easier. She had saved every soft part of herself for him, saved every breaking moment for hallways where no one would see. Henry sat in that car for a long time and felt the last wall inside him develop its first real crack. Some people, when they discover someone has been quietly carrying part of their weight, fall apart with gratitude. Janet Santos was not some people. She found out on a Wednesday morning, A hospital administrator, a different one, softer, apologetic, pulled her aside to confirm the balance on Gabriel's account. 0, cleared, fully funded forward for the remainder of treatment. Anonymous donor. No contact information. No name. Janet stood very still. She asked 2 questions. Got 2 answers. And by the time she walked through Henry Anderson's front door that morning, she already knew. She found him in his office. Did not knock. Did not wait. He looked up from his desk. Read her face in under a second. Said nothing. "It was you," she said. Not a question. He did not insult her by treating it like one. The silence between them was the kind that has weight. The kind you feel against your ribs. Gabriel needed the treatment, he said finally. You weren't going to ask. That is not your decision to make. No, he said. It wasn't. He held her gaze, did not flinch from it, did not dress the admission in justification. Just held it, steady, open, more exposed than she had ever seen a man like him allow himself to be. Janet's jaw tightened. Something moved behind her eyes that was not anger, though it arrived dressed like it. I don't need rescuing, she said. I never did. I know that, Henry said quietly. This wasn't rescue. She waited. Then what was it? He looked at her for a long moment. The kind of moment that rearranges things. It was the only thing I knew how to give, he said, to someone I couldn't stop thinking about. The room went completely still, and Janet Santos, who had held herself together through 3 years of tests and Tuesdays and hallways and hospital corridors, felt something in her chest respond to that before her mind could stop it. There are moments that ask nothing of you, and still take everything. The rain arrived without warning, the way the most significant things always do. By the time Janet's shift ended, the sky had made its decision, and the pavement outside the mansion was slick and black and completely indifferent to her plans. She stood at the side entrance, coat pulled close, calculating buses and timing and the particular exhaustion of a woman who has been strong all day and has a little further to go. He appeared beside her without announcement. I'll drive you. She looked at him. He was not asking. She almost said no. He could see her choosing the words. And then the rain made its argument again, cold, insistent, and she said nothing, which was the closest Janet Santos ever came to surrender. The car was warm. That was the first thing. The kind of warmth that gets into your shoulders and makes it harder to stay guarded. She sat with her hands in her lap, her sleeve dark and damp where the rain had caught her, and the city moved past the window in long, blurred streaks of light. He glanced over once. You always stare like you're solving something, she said, without turning from the glass. You make silence complicated. She said nothing to that, but something shifted in the line of her jaw. Not a smile, not quite. Something quieter and more dangerous than a smile. At a red light, he leaned across to adjust the seatbelt that had twisted near her collarbone. His hand moved close. Did not touch her. The car did not move. Neither did either of them, for one suspended beat longer than the task required. Her breathing changed. His did too. Some silences do not empty a room, they fill it, with everything 2 people are not yet ready to say out loud. The light turned green. He drove. She looked forward, and the warmth between them had nothing to do with the heater anymore. A man who has spent 15 years feeling nothing is completely unprepared for the particular misery of feeling too much. Henry was not supposed to be at City General that afternoon. He had a reason prepared, should anyone ask. A board member on the 3rd floor, a facilities review, something clean and unverifiable. He was good at reasons. He had been building them for weeks now, each one a small, quiet lie he told himself about why he kept ending up wherever Janet Santos happened to be. He found her in the corridor outside Gabriel's room. She was not alone. A man, one of the younger doctors, easy smile, relaxed posture, the particular confidence of someone who had never once been told his presence was unwelcome, was leaning against the wall beside her, saying something that made Janet laugh. Not her polite laugh, not her professional laugh. The real one. The unguarded, unhurried one that Henry had only ever caught in fragments, like light through a closing door. Something cold moved through him from the chest outward. He crossed the corridor, said her name once. The doctor straightened, made his excuses, left with the efficient instinct of a man who understood, without being told, that the temperature had changed. Janet turned, looked at Henry for a long moment with the particular expression of a woman who misses nothing. "You look offended," she said. "I dislike interruptions." She tilted her head slowly, a beat of silence. Then, with the calm precision of someone placing a card face up on the table, "You dislike competition." He said nothing, which, as they both understood perfectly well, was the loudest answer he could have given. Janet held his gaze for one composed, unhurried moment. Then she turned back toward Gabriel's room, one corner of her mouth doing something she did not quite manage to stop. Henry stood in that corridor and felt like a man who had just lost an argument he was not even supposed to be having. There is a particular kind of ending that does not feel like one, because what it is actually closing is not the story, but the distance. Gabriel Santos was 8 years old and entirely unafraid of Henry Anderson. That alone was remarkable. Most adults who entered Henry's orbit adjusted themselves. Their posture, their volume, the particular way they chose their words. Gabriel walked into the sitting room on a Saturday afternoon, looked Henry directly in the eye, and said, with complete sincerity, that his mother had told him Henry was the man who fixed things. Henry looked at Janet. Janet looked at the ceiling. "I told him you were good at solving problems," she said. He extrapolated. Something happened to Henry Anderson's face in that moment that none of his board members, none of his lawyers, none of his carefully managed inner circle had ever witnessed. Something quiet and unguarded and entirely beyond his control. He almost smiled. Fully. The real kind. Gabriel, satisfied, went back to his book. Later, after Gabriel had fallen asleep in the armchair by the window, one shoe off, completely trusting in the way only healthy children and people with clear consciences can sleep, Henry and Janet stood together in the low light of that room, close but not touching, both looking at the boy. "He is going to be fine," Henry said, and meant it across every possible dimension of those words. Janet was quiet for a moment. "I know," she said softly. "He always was." Henry turned to look at her then, and she was already looking at him. No test, no note, no money on a dresser between them, just two people standing in the same light finally, with nothing left to prove to each other. He reached for her hand. She let him. Some endings arrive like weather. You feel them coming before they reach you. Janet Santos felt this one on a quiet Friday morning, standing in the doorway of Henry's study, with a folded letter in her hand and the particular stillness of a woman who has already made a decision she is not entirely sure she can keep. Gabriel was better. The doctors had used words like remarkable and responding well and cautiously optimistic. Words Janet had held close in the dark of every Tuesday and Thursday for the past year. Now they were simply true. He was better. Which meant the reason she had stayed, the reason she had kept her head down and her hands steady and her heart carefully behind glass. That reason was changing shape. And when the shape of a reason changes, sometimes the whole thing shifts with it. She had written the resignation that morning. Clean, professional, grateful. Signed her name at the bottom in full. Henry was at his desk when she entered. He read her face before she crossed the room. He always did. He stood without a word and crossed to her slowly, not urgently, not dramatically. The way a man moves when he knows exactly what is at stake and has decided not to pretend otherwise. She held out the letter. He did not take it. "Stay," he said quietly, "because you choose to, not because you need anything from me." Janet looked at him for a long moment. Everything they had been, the tests, the money, the hospital corridors, the rain and the silence and the almost smiles and the one real one, moved between them without a word. "And if I stay?" she asked. "Then I learn," he said, "how to deserve it." She looked at the letter in her hand, then at him. She set it down on the edge of his desk, very slowly, face down. He moved closer. She did not step back. The kiss was not rushed. It was not desperate. It was the kind of kiss that comes after everything has already been said. Slow and certain, and so deeply earned that the room itself seemed to exhale around them. From the hallway, the sound of Gabriel laughing at something on his tablet drifted through the open door, loose and bright and completely unbothered. And Henry Anderson, the man who had spent 15 years testing everyone who walked through his door, stood in the wreckage of every wall he had ever built, holding the hand of the only person who had never once tried to take anything from him. Some people enter your life quietly. No announcement, no fanfare. Then one day you look up and realize your whole life has learned their name.